fears of the spread of coronavirus has now gripped much of the world. The Australian newspaper has just revealed that Japan is now urging Australia not to impose a China-like travel ban as the federal government prepares to review its antivirus strategy. Joining us live now is political reporter from The Australian, Richard Ferguson, who had this exclusive report. Richard, appreciate your time. Take us through the details of this request from Japan.
So the current travel advice from Australia to people going to Japan is to exercise a high degree of caution because there are now more than 850 confirmed cases of coronavirus in Japan. Of course, the bulk of that being from the disease-ridden Diamond Princess cruise ship. And then there's an even higher warning for South Korea, where it's now about 970, reaching 1,000 cases there in South Korea. So the Japanese embassy today has said that there is no need for a travel ban between Australia and Japan at this point. They say that they're working very closely, but the fact that they are preemptively saying there is no need for a travel ban shows how worried other countries are that they're now going to experience the same fate as China as these cases spread so much more rapidly. Of course, we're seeing that in Japan, we're seeing that in South Korea, and we're seeing that in Italy, which is almost eclipsing Japan when you take out the Diamond Princess cruise ships as a kind of outbreak epicenter.
And Richard, we know that China hasn't been all too pleased about the ever-increasing length of travel ban that we've seen the Australian government imposing on China. Is that expected to be extended again tomorrow when the National Security Committee of Cabinet meets to examine the issue?
Well, if it's not extended, it may be a case that is extended, but kind of amendments are made. Obviously, already we're allowing in new year 11 and 12 students from China to study here in Australia. Previously, they were banned. I mean, obviously, the universities are very keen to get more of their higher education students from China in. But of course, they're also going to have to look at the other countries. Now, Brendan Murphy, the chief medical officer, the other day said, you know, it'd be basically impossible to isolate Australia from a large number of countries. But he said that all options are open when it comes to other travel bans. Now, the Prime Minister yesterday said that that's not the advice yet, but it will be interesting to see how that develops, especially as things get a lot worse in Japan, South Korea and Italy.
It is really just so challenging for the government to handle, isn't it, Richard? I mean, you've got obviously the economic impact, and we've heard a lot about that and the future of the surplus, but also on the health front, we know that the government is really ready now with this pandemic response plan as we do see coronavirus spread around, and that's pretty much just being ready for the worst case scenario if that does happen to play out.
Well, exactly, and you know this plan, which was published about 10 days ago, has said that the worst case scenario is that we have these fever clinics, these quarantine areas, which they've been talking about for some time, and that this could put tremendous strain on things like blood services and diagnostics because hospitals are going to have to focus on essentials, and it's becoming more and more clear that that is a possibility, despite the fact the government's dealt with it very well. Because each day the coronavirus outbreak gets worse and worse and worse. And the biggest problem at the moment appears to be Europe, where, of course, there's freedom of movement, there's little border control, and what we're seeing happen in Italy, we're seeing the sprouts of it in places like Spain. So this is very challenging for the government. And once again, they may say it's impossible to put travel bans on a large number of countries, but that you'd have to think that there'll be some restrictions on some areas if the situation gets a lot worse in those free countries in particular.
You would think so. Richard Ferguson from The Australian, appreciate you bringing up to date on that story. Thank you so much for your insights.